Welcome to Amateur Redneck Workshop. This is part 2 of starting the welding on the plasma cutter table. And remember, I told you guys this whole job is going to take several months because I'm not in a hurry. Okay? at the end of the video, after I've had the Bubba joke and I tell you that's all, folks, well, there is actually some more video to follow. About a minute of Mary Poppins shooting the steel challenge and a couple of minutes of me playing with a motor. You can watch that or not, as you see fit, of course. Anyway, we're up to part 2. Let's just go ahead and get right on with it. As much as I want to build my own hoist, and I'll build one of these days. Won't be as good as a Harbor Freight hoist, but I'll build one someday. But not today. Today, I'm hanging another Harbor Freight hoist. So I'm going to put you to sleep while I finagle it around. Alright, so I've got, that's one side of the table that I've got laid out straight, clamped down to where maybe I can tack it and it'll stay more or less straight. I know it's not going to be perfectly straight, but when I get down to the guide rails for the motor, those have got to turn out straight, and I'll make them straight regardless of whatever they're setting on, you know, whether that stuff there's straight or not. So we're going to get there. Nevertheless, welding has started. Alright, so there's one end welded together on one side, and quite a bit of heavy grinding to make it all smooth where the next pieces are going to weld on at. So now I got to make one more just like that, or maybe better. Alright, so there's the 2-foot dimension of it welded up. Next I've got to put the 3-foot pieces in there, and that will make the basic framework of the thing. So it's not very late yet. It's only about 4 o'clock, so probably by 6 I can get those other things welded in. Just got to figure out how I'm going to position it so it's straight. Alright, I forgot, after the video's over, after I've said goodbye and keep on keeping on and all that, I'm going to add on a minute of Mary Poppins shooting the steel challenge. I'd forgot about it. This just yesterday. I was out there and I got a whole new low score, 75 seconds, which would put me into an A rating in the classifications if I had a rating, which is another story. But anyway, there's what I've got so far welding up the table, and I've got another pair of 2x2s to put in there before it's finished. I had a rough time getting it all lined up and all that so that I could finish welding the longer pieces on there. Did that on the floor. Wasn't very comfortable. And once I've got all that mess up there on the lights moved around some, then I'll get back to welding. And I'll show you the Harbor Freight hoist is up there in the ceiling, and I mounted it. I'll show you something of how I mounted it in just a second here. But it's well mounted and it works and all that sort of thing. Alright, there's brackets to hang that thing on up there. I cut out 2 pieces of this 3/16 steel. I drilled a hole here, 2 holes there, a 1/2-inch hole down here to put a rod through. And there's 2 pieces like this. And I did these 2 holes so that if I was leaning over, you know, at an angle on the 2x6, like say like that, one hole would be closer to the inside than the other, you know, further from the edge. Thought that would make it stronger. And this being as thick as it is, it should hold several thousands of pounds. I made 2 pieces like that, and so they're hooked into 2 2x6s. And I have in the past lifted the engine end of a car with 2 2x6s, so the 300 or 400 pounds that I wind up with on this welding table should not be any kind of a strain at all. Okay? At one time when I was working, we had a bunch of relays like this on these bases, and I went through to kind of modernize things, and I put a PLC in, you know, which is short for programmable logic controller, and replaced a slew of these things, and they were throwing them all in the trash can. And so I thought, well, I'd like to have 3 or 4 of those just to play with. But you know how it is when you're working in a big company. It may be going into the scrap dumpster, or, you know, going to haul it off to a landfill. But if you take it, you could be technically accused of stealing it, you know. So I had to go hunt down my boss and get permission from him to take 3 or 4 of these out the gate, you know. So I had a signed note from him that it's okay, that they were being thrown away. And so I came home and I hooked this up to my garage door opener. Of course, when the garage door opener activates, it turns on a couple of lights. Well, the lights would toggle this relay and turn on the lights in the rest of the garage. And when this relay, you know, when the lights in the garage door opener are timed out, this relay would flip back over, and then I could go over and run the lights in the garage off the light switch. And it's been that way for several years until just here a couple of days ago, and I started hearing a crackling noise. And I got to looking at this thing, and you can see this pin right here. He's burnt. You can see he's burnt. You can see this base here. He's burnt. Apparently, this thing came to the end of its life just a couple of days ago. So instead of working on the plasma table, I'm going to rearrange the lighting in here and all the light wiring, and we won't have that automatically turn on all the light feature anymore. I can probably live without it because I've got a light on the corner that stays open, you know, stays on all the time. But anyway, it lasted for probably 10, 15 years, probably 15 years maybe, long time. Well, first thing I need to do is I got to apologize to Curt Cook. I had him placed in Canada, and come to find out he's in Minnesota. It's the same weather, it's just on the other side of the border, you know. Us rednecks figure anything that's not Texas is Canada, you know. It's just one of those things. Anyway, Curt had this buddy named Sven. In fact, his name was Sven Say. And you spell that S-A-E, all in capital letters. And Sven, he was a pretty smart guy. He went to college, he got himself a degree as a civil engineer. But when he got out, his first job was to build this big old bridge, you know. And see, he built this bridge. And he shows up with a bunch of people up there on the bridge for the dedication. And it turns out that Sven had just made one little miscalculation there on the thing, and kaboom, bridge caved in, killed everybody. So when Sven woke up, there he was looking at Satan, and Satan was just as happy as he could be, you know. He had never had an engineer before, and he needed one bad. He says, "I got your card right here, boy." He says, "Welcome to hell." He says, "I need a lot of improvements around here." He says, "I want you to look around and see what you can do." He says, "First off," he says, those people out there, the condemned folks, I got them shoveling coal into the hellfire, but they just barely shovel it slow because they're trying to keep down the heat and not suffer as bad." And he said, "They're kind of sullen when my imps come along and poke them with a pitchfork. They just hardly move a little bit." He said, "I need some improvement on that." So Sven went to work, you know, and after about a month or so, he had a bunch of augers set up, rolling coal up into the fire, you know, and it was hotter than it ever been. You know, people were just suffering something terrible. And he looked at the pitchforks, and he made some cattle prods kind of pitchforks, you know, hooked them on to cattle prods. And so when they poke somebody with, "Whoa, that make me dizzy." Hope you didn't get dizzy. Anyway, when they poked them with the cattle prods, they just light their fire, you know, roll their eyes back in their heads. So they were more cooperative, you know, and suffering more, and the devil was really happy with everything. So God come by there to take a look at his competition, you know, and come walking through, and he says, "You've got a lot of changes here." He said, "How'd you do that?" Satan says, "Oh," he says, "I got Sven S-A-E there. He's the engineer." He said, "He's been making all these improvements." And God says, "Hey," he says, "No, you're not supposed to have him. I sent you Sven the drunk. He's supposed to belong to me, that engineer." And Sage says, well, he says, I don't know about none of that, but I'll tell you one thing, I got him and I'm keeping him. So God says, well, he says, look here, he says, I just have to take you to court and file a suit on you. The devil thought on that. Satan says, oh, yeah, he says, and just where you're going to get a lawyer. Well, that's all, folks. Y'all try to subscribe if you're not already a subscriber. Leave a comment if you got something to say. And above all, remember, keep on keeping on. Bye now.
Grab my breakfast.
Try that way.
Okay, I'm there.
Grab and squeeze.
Hitting upper 2 digits, maybe triple digits on a good day. My gas is also like 83 cents a gallon. So I just fill it up. I mean, this
445. 445.
And yes, I have pretty much given up on the idea of making my own hoist because I keep getting beat by Harder Freight and their $100 hoist. And doing it myself, I'm not going to be able to do it for $100, I'm sure. So anyway, I got this because I was looking around for a power supply to run this guy and couldn't find anything but a battery charger. I got this guy. He'll provide voltage for me for, you know, all kinds of little projects now and then, here and there. It's like a $40 eBay power supply. I'm sure it's made of Chinesium and all that sort of thing, but it's in a metal box here, and I can adjust the current and the voltage and just really have a good old time with it. And I'm going to see how much current this little motor pulls. I know you may not be interested in that in the least bit, but I am. So I'm going to work at it. I'm going to take the little bugger and I'm going to hook it up to the motor. And I'm going to start cranking the voltage up. Oh, I see something wrong here. Alright. I don't know how to use this thing yet, really. Alright, so this is a 12 volt motor. And I've got 8 volts, 9, 10. Yeah, a car would be probably somewhere around there. The battery's all charged up. That's an amp and a half of current, and I'm allowing it to have all it wants. And the little bugger's trucking on pretty good there. So let's crank it on up. There's almost 2 amps of power in it. It's really humming on now, isn't it? I tried this on a little motor just a little bit bigger than my thumb, and I blew the little motor up. So anyway, maybe I won't blow this one up. If I do, we'll charge it up to experience. Bad experience, but experience. Pretty impressive, huh? Alright, slow her back down. There we go. Well, I thought that was interesting. It's a little aside, something you to look at here. And of course, the little motor's not hot. They never get hot until you use them a whole lot. How about that, huh?